Cameroon's long-serving leader, President Paul Biya, has confirmed he will run for an unprecedented 8th term in office this October, cementing his place as the world's oldest sitting head of state at 92 years. Biya's announcement, made on a social media handle X, of course, comes amid mounting political tension, with 43 years already at the helm. Biya has never lost an election. His decision puts to rest months of speculation while reigniting concerns about stagnation and democratic decay in the Central African nation. And so joining me to discuss this is Professor Eric Simi, independent presidential candidate in Cameroon, and of course Dr. Christopher Formunyo, Senior Associate for Africa and Special Advisor, TV President, National Democratic Institute. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to be with you.
Of course. It's nice to have you around. So I understand that we have Dr. Formunyo for now, and we're hoping that Professor Simi will join us during the course of the conversation. So I start with you, sir. Now, what would you make of a 92-year-old man, after 43 years as president, still seeking re-election to remain in power?
It is extremely difficult to explain that someone at 92 would want to seek re-election and serve another 7-year term in a country whose population is made up of mostly young people and where the average age is 19. President Paul Biya has been in power for 43 years, and he cannot be telling Cameroonians now that what he has not accomplished in 43 years of power, he's going to be able to accomplish in the next 7 years when he's more than 92 years old. It's unacceptable. It's humiliating to the 30 million Cameroonians who are young, dynamic, intelligent people, and it beats my imagination why he will be doing this to himself, to his family, and to a country that he claims to love and respect.
Well, maybe he has an unfinished business, I must say, because in that post on the social media, he said the best is yet to come. So maybe he wants to consolidate on his so-called previous years of achievement, don't you think?
So, because if you follow the politics of Cameroon and you go back to all the messages and all the slogans that Paul Biya has used in the past for campaign purposes, a lot of his promises have not been met. A lot of the promises that he made during previous campaigns have not been met, and that explains why Cameroon today is facing tremendous insecurity in the north, in the east, in the Anglophone parts of the country. It's facing a lot of economic hardship with young people who cannot find jobs and where the unemployment rate is pretty high. It's facing a lot of issues of governance, respect for the rule of law, and the ability to renew political leadership across the country. But he has always made those promises on the eve of every election. And there's no reason to believe that after 92, he will have, if he had another mandate, that he will not be able to implement what he's not been able to do in the past 4 decades of being at the helm of state.
What were the promises that he brought forward while campaigning some 43 years ago, owing to some of these issues that are still bedeviling Cameroon?
For example, he always said that he will have a very united country in which every Cameroonian would feel like they belong. If you look at the politics of Cameroon today, the country is extremely polarized. Ethnicity and tribalism become part of the discourse. If you look at the country today, the Anglophone minority, which constitutes about 20% of the population, is feeling extremely marginalized to the point where some elements of that population have taken up arms, and a conflict that now is in its 8th year. If you look at what's happening in the extreme northern part of the country, that shares a border with Maiduguri in Nigeria and parts of Lake Chad Basin, that the issues of violent extremism have been going on now under his tenure, and he hasn't dealt with that. If you look at indicators from Transparency International and other international organizations with regards to governance, with regards to issues of corruption and embezzlement, those issues are very high, and Cameroon scores very poorly under his leadership. And if he hasn't been able to resolve these issues, and if Cameroon today is not one of the shining stars of the African continent, he cannot tell us that it's when he's 92 years old and beyond that he's going to be able to do that. The mere fact that he should even tender his candidacy for consideration speaks volumes. Because if you go around the country, people will tell you that they haven't seen their president for decades. People will tell you that he hasn't visited the 10 regions of the country in the recent time. People will tell you that he has not held a cabinet meeting with members of his government for years. People will tell you that even this year, since May 20th, since the National Day celebrations of May 20th, people have not heard or seen their president in public. So how is he going to be able to govern this country of 30 million inhabitants with the complexities of issues that Cameroon now faces, with the complexity of issues impacting our continent of Africa on the world stage that has become even more challenging for African nations and countries that are trying to also have their voices heard? It's just unbelievable, difficult to explain, and I think that it's setting up Cameroon to converge into another crisis that would amplify the crisis that the country already faces under his tenure.
All right, Dr. Fomonyo, I'd like you to stay with us for a while. We'll continue with this conversation in a short while, but then we need to take this. And that's about it from Ijebu Kingdom. And we pray that of course, indigents of the town and the families of the late monarch would be granted the fortitude to bear the loss. And so we go back to our conversation, even as we look at the Cameroonian President, Paul Biya, who announced yesterday on one of the social media platforms saying that he will be running for the 8th term of his presidential campaign in the country. Of course, there have been several reactions as regards that particular announcement on social media, and I've been talking to Dr. Christopher Fomonyo, who has been helping us understand what the mood is like, what his reign, or should I say his administration, has been like in Cameroon as of the last 43 years. Dr. Fomonyo, thank you so much for your patience and for staying with us on this. So I'd like to ask, even as we move on, is Paul Biya popular among the people, most especially Cameroonians, even as they have heard that he will be contesting again?
Well, first of all, let me take this opportunity to express my condolences for the passing of the monarch of Ijiboland and the people of Ogun State, as well as my condolences to all of the people of Nigeria for the passing of former President Muhammadu Buhari.
Thank you, sir.
These are statesmen and traditional monarchs that have served their people and their country well. And it's befitting that in this moment we all grieve with their families. Let me coming back to the specific case of Cameroon. These are people of Paul Biya's generation, and one would expect that for a president who was already active in the presidency of the Republic of Cameroon in the early 60s, by this time, President Paul Biya would also have taken his retirement to spend more time with his grandkids and his great-great-grandkids and the rest of his family. When he came into power in 1982, he was only 49 years old. And he was young, he was educated, he looked vibrant, he looked strong, he said the right things, he talked about morality and rigorous commitment to public service, and he raised a lot of hopes that he will be able to take the country of Cameroon from where his predecessor had left it to a higher level. Unfortunately, as he has stayed long with each presidential term, his popularity has also diminished. His accomplishments have also diminished. And when you look at all the sectors in Cameroon, including in the economic sector, all of the major companies and corporations that existed before he came to power have now either been dismantled or have gone bankrupt. All of the institutions that were vibrant, active before he came into power have all been destroyed. And the country that looked so united that at the time it used to be called the Africa in miniature has become a mockery of itself. And so while he has put in place a very centralized system where agencies of the state have worked to keep him and his political party in power, there is no doubt in my mind that the level of unpopularity has grown, and the level of discontent has grown, and the level of disenchantment has grown with the passage of time.
Well, it's quite interesting, Professor Fomoyo, that Dr. Fomoyo, that you say this, because the president, Paul Biya, said his decision to contest once again came from numerous and insistent calls from citizens home and abroad. Some were saying, oh, maybe this is a general consensus among Cameroonians that he should remain in power because he has the expertise. He's been there for years. He understands where the challenges are, and he has the solutions to some of these problems that you have highlighted.
Oh, no, but nobody can be fooled by that, because that's always been the excuse that autocratic regimes use. It's always a call, responding to a call from the people. Even in the one-party days, people said they were responding to the calls of the people. And the history of Cameroon also shows that the country has had a lot of difficulties around its elections, and that almost all of the elections that Biya declared he won in the past have been highly contested. The outcomes have been controversial. In 1992, for example, when Cameroon had the first competitive political presidential elections after the legalization of the multi-party system, till today, well over 30 years, people are still contesting the outcome of those elections because there was a sizable chunk of the Cameroonian population that believed that Biya didn't win those polls. So putting in a social media post that this is coming as a response to calls from the population, when the party, his own party, has not been able to hold its party congress for over 5 years, when his own party has not even held a nomination convention to demonstrate that even members of his party are fully in support of his candidacy. It's very easy as a head of state, where you control the state media and other apparatus of government, to put out a social media tweet that says, I'm candidate because I'm responding to calls from citizens. Anybody can say that. But the reality of today's Cameroon is that there is a lot of unhappiness and discontent, and even more importantly, a lot of uncertainty about what this means for a country of 30 million inhabitants facing the kinds of challenges that today's Cameroon faces.
Well, some people feel or think that Cameroonians are a bit docile in demanding a regime change. We've seen other African countries who have championed this cause, and they've been able to effect a change in, most especially, presidency. But then it has taken Paul Biya 43 years to stay in power without being challenged. And people are saying, well, he's been able to manipulate the state machinations to perpetuate himself there. Do you think that is the true narrative in the country?
Well, you raised a very important point, and that's part of the concern that I have and that I've expressed very publicly, because the trends that we're seeing across Africa today, it's a lot of dissatisfaction, especially amongst young people, that their voices are not being heard and that they're not having the opportunity to weigh in how they get to be governed, let alone compete to be in positions of power. And my concern, my fear, is that for a country where the average age is 19 years, if you continue to have people in their 90s governing the country, then there's going to be a huge disconnect, there's going to be huge discontent, and there may come a time when all of these young people, the majority of the population, will feel that it no longer serves their purpose to participate in the political process, to participate in democratic practices, and that they should be looking for other alternatives to have their voices heard. That discontent has already cost our continent, the African continent, a number of stable democracies. We don't want to see that in Cameroon. And I even say that I am really pleased that Nigeria, that is next door to Cameroon, is also paying attention to these issues, because given the instability in Cameroon, the insecurity in Cameroon, Cameroon already has well over 100,000 refugees, Cameroonian refugees in Nigerian states, all the way from Maiduguri, Taraba, Benue, down to River State and Cross River, who have fled the conflict in Anglophone Cameroon. If Cameroon gets destabilized today because of discontent with the fact that a 92-year-old man wants to stay at the helm of the state, it's going to impact countries like Nigeria. It's also going to impact the rest of Africa, because the rest of the world looks at Africa and says, this is the youngest continent on the surface of the earth. In fact, in the next 2 decades, 30% of the world's youth will be from the African continent. And so the rest of the world looks at us as Africans and says, how can you be such a young continent? And then you still have people that are 93 years old, that have been in power for over 4 decades, still trying to run for public office, and you are allowing this to happen. And so this, for me, is not just a Cameroonian issue. It's not just for an issue for the sub-region of West Africa that is a neighbor, or Central Africa. It's an issue for the entire continent and for the world, and more level-headed voices need to speak out within his political party, as well as within Cameroon, and also amongst other African powerhouses such as Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, and the rest of them as well.
Now, you keep talking about his age, 93, and some people would ask the question, fine, if he leaves office, who takes charge? There have been several opposition members who have worked with him, but then have stopped being friends with him and have started pushing a coalition and opposition to contest the presidency with him. But there have been questions as to their political relevance and the pedigree they have to wrest power from him. When you look at all those other options, do you think they have what it takes to challenge him in the coming election?
Well, that really speaks to the importance of having credible elections with institutions that can allow for the practice of democracy to be real. Because when you have a democratic process and you elect a president who is not performing, by the next election, if they have nothing to show for their tenure, then the population is going to have the opportunity to vote them out of office. But if you have a president who is in place, who has so wired the system so that it can no longer function in a transparent manner, obviously they're going to be able to sit tight for decades. And that's what he has done. So part of the plea is that he should retire so that Cameroonian institutions can begin to function as normal institutions. And it's those institutions and the democratic processes that would weed out who are the good candidates and who are the good leaders. And if those leaders don't perform, then in the next election cycle, they too will be voted out. That is how you renew political leadership in a democratic society. And the unfortunate thing for Cameroon is that if this president, having been in power for over 4 decades, having wired the system so much, using other levers of power to restrict political space, to make it extremely difficult for civil society to thrive or to monitor the process, to make it extremely difficult for political parties to even hold meetings or even press conferences in their own party headquarters. then you're not going to create that environment that allows for visionary leaders to appear and to contest for elections in their own country, and that is unacceptable in the 21st century.
Well, I guess this is going to be quite a dicey and a very, very tense political atmosphere in Cameroon between now and October when the elections will be held. But then we will continue to keep our eyes on it to see what eventually happens and who will hold sway, of course, in the top seats in Cameroon. Dr. Christopher Formonyo, Senior Associate for Africa and Special Advisor to the President's National Democratic Institute. Thank you so much for your time on the conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure being with you.